And then Joe, I'll have you call the meeting to order. And John,
Do I have to make it a motion or?
no, you can call the meeting.
I'd like to call the meeting
And then the first item is minutes.
from
January 31st.
Yeah.
Okay, let's review those minutes.
I move to approve the minutes of January 31st as presented.
I second.
Let's take a vote.
All those,
All those in favor?
I
motion carries.
Perfect.
Mitch, do you want to do introductions?
I can do it.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember. Yeah, he doesn't, yeah. Okay, I think I'm gonna stand up even though it's a little, just, I may change my mind later on, but it's just easier for me to probably talk. I'm used to sitting so much. I got a few requests like, where's your PowerPoint? Where's your PowerPoint? But I thought that this would be a small group. And so I really wanted to be interactive and find out what you guys are interested in. So I'm happy to come back. I have lots of versions of PowerPoints and I'm happy if you guys like that, no problem. But first we got to figure out what the issues are that, you need. So just a little introduction to who I am, which I can do. Yeah, sometimes I start with saying I was born in a cooperative hospital, which I'm from Seattle, so it was Group Health Cooperative Puget Sound. My father went to Boeing. Everybody, that was the healthcare there, but it really impressed on people who were members. I think the kind of it takes a village idea. So that one time I had to have a transfusion as a kid, and so of course, as a member of the health cooperative, our family had to return a pint of blood. So, of course, it wasn't, simultaneous or the same kind necessarily, but, go down. And so it's also a matter of the health cooperative, which was the largest in Seattle and still going strong and everything, was very much focused on prevention because obviously that saved the members money and also lives and health, as opposed to waiting for, surgery that costs, why the American healthcare costs so much. I mean, this kind of thing of just of working as it takes a village really was instilled in me by my experiences, not particularly by my parents, but by my experiences really, early on. So when I moved to Milwaukee, I immediately co-started River Edge Housing Cooperative, which is at the dead end of Chambers on the river. It's still going strong. We started it in 1978. And it was an existing row of 10 townhouses. So it's a lot easier than new construction. It had eight 2-bedroom homes and then 2 3-bedroom at each end, one on each end. And so we were able to purchase that. It was, full of tenants. So we had to work out with the tenants who could afford it, who could stay, and we didn't want to evict anyone who was there and all that sort of thing. The cooperative model that we set up was limited equity cooperative model, so that the entity owns the real estate and the members are, the tenants are members of the cooperative. So it's a limited equity. You have to put in so much down payment, and then you got from the cost of living, Bureau of Labor Statistics cost of living adjustment for Milwaukee metropolitan area, your down payment was increased, and that's what you were paid out when you left, but not equity. It's not equity building. But like I said, it's still going strong. We were able to get the very first ever mortgage from the National Cooperative Bank, which just started up then and is still going strong, and is now 2 years ago expanded their scope of lending to co-housing. Which was advocated for a really long time. So I've kind of been at this alternative housing issue for some time. What I really do, what my day job is I have a law firm, Cross Law Firm. We have offices downtown Milwaukee, kind of by Marquette and the courthouse. We have an office in Waukesha, and we have an office in Appleton. We do employment. We represent unions and represent cooperatives, pretty much all the cooperatives around town, which is consumer cooperatives, housing cooperatives, and worker cooperatives as well. So that's kind of what I was doing, my background. And then I really got interested in co-housing, and I started speaking on co-housing. I became a co-housing consultant in this 500 communities kind of program that took a year, mostly focused on new construction, about which I knew nothing and now know a little bit more. So that's good. In terms of learning co-housing. So I've spoken at the National Housing Conference a number of times on sustainability of co-housing, also at the Energy Fair, agriculture and co-housing. And then I spoke at the American Institute of Architects in Minneapolis 2 or 3 times, which was really interesting because co-housing is designed to encourage social interaction, physically designed that way, whereas architects in the United States are normally trained and experienced in designing for privacy. And so when I gave the first speech into the American Institute of Architects, there was, I don't know, 30, 50 people in the room or something. And then the next year they invited me back and it was like a plenary of 250 people because they were like, whoa, did you hear that about designing for social interaction? It's, you know, it's kind of unheard of in architectural circles. It's quite distinct. It's quite a different design. So that's kind of what I've been up to related to this. And then we've been working on finding a site literally for 10 years for the project that we're working on now, which we'll talk a little bit about later. That's the background that I have. And then what I wanted to do really now is just ask you guys, like, why are you having me talk to you? And what are the problems that you're trying to address? And what are the hopes and goals that you're trying to achieve that, you know, caused you to ask me to, you know, come here? So I want to hear from you. What's going on in Shorewood? What's the issue? What's the problem? What's the goal? What's the dream?
So the things that we're currently majorly focused on is affordable housing at 3 publicly owned lots. I would expect that a project like this probably doesn't fit in well with that current set of goals. But we might have a large plot of land becoming available for where the public works land is, which is right on the Oakley Trail. It's
I know where it's right by me. I live right by there.
Yes, it's kind of similar to the plot of land that you have. It's near bus lines. It's a really nice plot of land. And I was,
Yeah, that is a good plot. of
yeah,
land.
my goal of having you come speak was hopefully to get a more diverse set of ideas of what could be done with that particular set of land. I think something like co-housing would be very beneficial to the village. I think we do a decent job in the village of kind of nurturing a village atmosphere and like having people be communal. But I think having construction that, like you said, physically but incentivizes people to interact rather than private, I think can be a real big boon for the village and for as well as like, I know some of your focus has been more like race equity, because I know you've mentioned a lot of the co-housing throughout the country has struggled with that. Bringing you on to speak about the possibility of how that could be integrated in.
Interesting. Anybody else? Either dreams or problems to address, dreams to achieve? Yeah, Kathleen.
Happy.
Kathy.
I guess one of the unique situations in Shorewood, as you know, because you're our neighbor. We are fully built.
Just like Canada is our
Yeah,
neighbor.
right. We're better than that. We hope to maintain that.
Thank you.
It's our unique, we're built out, fully built out. We're built out to the point that we're really old built out. So we are, as Rebecca has said, we're rebuilding our village right now. We're putting in 44 million, I'll get these numbers mixed up, but it's about 44 million in water, lead service lines, 17 million street lights. There's other things that I'm not gonna think of. So
The new public works facility.
23 million. And that's on top of an already extremely high. And we have a very diverse housing mix. I mean, we have over 50, I think percent of our households are rental, which I think is surprising.
It's very surprising. I just heard that from your manager. I was
And
surprised.
so a lot of people probably think Shorewood, North Shore, affluent suburb, we're really quite diverse in terms of economic, and the way our housing is built, you know, so many duplexes that have 3 and 4 bedrooms on each level. It's kind of striking. And so I guess we're unique in the situation that we have a lot of diverse housing. We have a lot of diversity economically, but not racially, which is not uncommon for our area. But it's just, you know, the costs keep a lot of people out. We have a high level of services, which is one of the reasons some people come here, right? We have snow removal and we're updating our infrastructure, and you know, this all costs a lot of money. So a lot of people can't afford to move here. And I guess when I think about this in the broader picture, I think about, you know, Southeast Wisconsin, specifically Milwaukee. I'm not from here originally, I moved here. And I have always loved what I thought was the diversity in all the different cultures and ethnic groups and all the different festivals and everything. But we're still very segregated. And so that's a problem. But I guess the thing that confounds me is when I just heard about another couple that left left Shorewood. They're going to go build a house in Germantown or Menominee Falls. And I'm like, oh, that's unfortunate. Why, you know, because I think they were renting here. And I think they just, you know, don't see, well, people have to decide where their values are, right? Their value was price, I think, and maybe more land, bigger house, bigger yard. And so that's a very personal decision, right? The other problem that I'm trying to, you know, there's no way we can change that, nor do we want to. I mean, this works pretty well. Our system works pretty well. But Milwaukee is losing people. The population is going down. And this probably sounds strange in this setting, but one of my big concerns is how do we get people to move back to the city? Because there are swaths of housing. I guess I'm not as concerned about bringing people into Shorewood because people do want to come in, and to me, it's a pricing issue, and the tax rate is certainly the part that we can control. But as just a member of a larger community and not just Shorewood, I think, how can we get people to come back to the city?
That was really helpful. How about you? What do you think? What are the challenges or the problems or the hopes and dreams of Shorewood?
We voted as a village to appropriate, how much was it? $2.2 million of a TIF district. We extended it to pay for affordable housing. We're trying to understand how to implement that. And this, you know, I just came with this blank slate. Yeah, I agree that I want to understand what you're doing. I know nothing about it. I know a lot of other people do. Just so we understand the breadth and scope of what's possible. So in that, probably where you would fit is probably in that public works plan. And so we'd just like to see how this model might be appropriate for that and in achieving our goal, which is really mandated to be affordable housing. So.
Oh, I already talked to her a long time before the meeting.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, Wesley, we forgot about Wesley. We made Wesley so small.
Yeah.
Thank God I'm not doing the thing where my head is like the size of the screen. It's uncomfortable when I'm in a room looking at the screen with someone's head that's gigantic. So no, I mean, I'm not, you know, I'm not going to belabor the point, but again, this is, for me, what I'm looking for is more optionality and more, just more ideas on what we can do to increase the affordable housing stock in Shorewood. I think there have been a lot of good points made around the table here. But what I'm looking to get out of this is just to get further ideas. I mean, it's been a while that we've had these funds allocated for affordable housing. Affordable housing has been something that's been identified as something that the community is interested in, the community wants, and we're trying to move the ball forward. And in doing that, I think we need to consider all different kinds of perspectives and what we can and can't do. As I think it was Kathy who said, Trustee Stokebrand who said, we're a fully built out community, so that somewhat limits our options, in addition to kind of some uncertainty as to what sites will and will not be available. But again, I think at this point, we still want to hear, and given that, we still want to hear kind of all the ideas and get all the ideas on the table that we can.
Awesome.
So as the village planner and the staff liaison to CDA and Plan Commission,
Oh.
my goals are a little more technical perhaps, but I'd be interested in any zoning obstacles that you've faced or have been challenged in Milwaukee or other communities that we would need to work on. Our Plan Commission this year has been charged with looking at our zoning code to see if there's opportunities for more housing. They focused on accessory dwelling units, but I also know
Yeah.
co-housing and other things are options. And so, yeah, selfishly, I would love the technical requirements of what co-housing needs. So yeah.
Good, I'm all about that. Okay, that's really, that's really helpful. And this is why I didn't do a PowerPoint because I want to really talk to what you're doing. And like I said, happy to come back with that. All right, so now let's just talk about what is co-housing, because you guys asked me to come here and talk about co-housing in particular. Co-housing is not a cooperative. I'd love to come and talk to you about cooperatives. We can talk about that a little bit when we talk about the affordability piece, but that's quite different. So I'm just going to talk about what is co-housing, what isn't co-housing, because there's a lot of misunderstanding and the word, there's a word they use, co-living and co-this and, so and then, the dwelling units, auxiliary dwelling, that's sometimes called co-living and so we're just going to talk about what really is co-housing and co-housing physically can be 300 acres and 50 homes with 5 acres each. I mean, there's like in Western New York, there's a couple like that. In the East, there's also a couple in California like that. It can also be one of the newer ones is PDX Commons in downtown Portland, which is a high rise, and there's high rise in Seattle. There's, a lot of ones that are just look like a big tall tower and other ones that are, very rural. So that's not the defining feature. And co-housing can be adapted to, a built community like Portland or, it's hard to find land in some of those in Portland and Seattle as well as Milwaukee, as well as Shorewood, actually. So, so that's one thing to keep in mind. It's not one size fits all. It's not like, you see a picture, it's not like you've seen one, how do they say that? You've seen one co-housing, you've seen one co-housing, that's how it really is. But they do have some common attributes. One is that normally they're legally condominiums. We're talking about condominiums and we're talking about private home ownership. That is what co-housing normally is. And, there's some variations and we can talk about that, but we're talking about ownership. Whereas cooperatives are also different models, and Ogden Row Cooperative, which is the oldest one, has ownership and full equity, which is a row of townhouses on Ogden. You might have seen they're gorgeous and old. And then River Ridge Housing Cooperative, which I've already described, which is not equity. But we're talking about, full equity, private home ownership in a condominium legal model. That's normally what co-housing is. Also what co-housing is, because people's like, commune. It's like, so one of the things that they always say in the list of what co-housing is everyone has their own, no shared income. So that, forget, dispel all of that. There's none of that 70s stuff in co-housing. But there are still a lot of ways to share, and that's where a lot of the savings comes in. Other attributes of co-housing are to de-emphasize cars. That's a big part of what co-housing is. And there's different ways that happens. We'll talk about our model of how we're doing that. It's a big deal to de-emphasize cars. Another attribute of co-housing, which is consistent depending upon the location, is this facing in model, where every house to the extent possible faces in a common courtyard. So like little Jamal up here can say, hey mom, Susie's kicking a ball down here, can I go down and play? And there's sights, there's eyes on the kids and eyes on the seniors. And, there's not every house is necessarily going to be that way, but that's the design. And that's the concept, is that it takes a village, and that's part of it is the looking in. The other part of co-housing, which is really the most important thing, is that it's what is called an intentional community. Intentional community, and that really filters through every stage and everything you do, which is that unlike, you hear people who live in wherever, not Shorewood, but farther north. And they decide, then they decide they're going to be really hip and move downtown to a condo, and then they're like, well, this is so cool, I get to go to the Repertory Theater, I can watch all this stuff, this is so great. And then you talk to them in 2 years, and then they say, this is so horrible, nobody ever talks to anybody, I don't know one neighbor, nobody speaks in the elevator, I'm moving back. I mean, I've heard that over and over and over again. And not everybody moves back, but a lot of people do not enjoy that model as much as they thought they would. Now, when you talk about what co-housing has, it's almost identical to what you talk about some downtown condominium has. Like shared workspaces or a common lounge or exercise room or, that kind of stuff. But the difference is that in co-housing, it's designed for social interaction, whereas in the downtown condominiums, it's still designed for privacy. So I have one great slide where it's actually a laundry room in the co-housing, and then there's a glass wall, and on the other side of the glass wall is people exercising on exercise machines, and then over on the side you can see a play area. So I can see myself, I'm sitting there drinking coffee in the lounge area, and somebody's putting laundry in, and can you watch little Susie? I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm doing nothing anyway, and then other people are exercising, watching, they're putting the laundry in, and they're seeing, everybody's seeing what everybody else is kind of doing, and that really makes a difference in terms of how nobody has an obligation to help anybody, but just in the sense of proximity, and when you design for social interaction, you kind of build up social cred because you're like, oh, I'm going to go to the pharmacy. Do you need me to pick up some medication for you? Or I'm going to drop off so-and-so to the playground. Do you want me to drop off, little what's it? Those things just kind of build up social cred. I always thought I would make $1 million by opening a drive-in milk store. So I have 4 kids, and it would be like, oh my God, it's 10 o'clock. Oh my God, there's no milk for the morning. You're just so screwed. Now you got to put the kid in the little, snowsuit. Then you got to put him in the little car seat. Then you got to put all that in the car. And then you get to the store and you got to do all the reverse to get them into the store. And then, oh my God. And then it's just like, it's such a big ordeal. Whereas you could just say to your next door neighbor, hey, I got to pick up some milk. Can you watch, little Jamal for, 15 minutes? Oh, sure. I haven't seen him for a while, like, of course. And it's like so helpful compared to the amount of effort that somebody's giving to someone else. The benefit is like 10 times more than what the inconvenience is. And so that's just what, builds community. But the intentional part is that we build community before we move in. So we build a cohesive group of people who want to govern themselves and manage themselves and maintain their housing together before they move in. And that really makes the difference when you've met everybody and been on working groups with everybody, before you move in, so that you've set up the rules. People always say to me like, well, can I have a dog? And I'm like, well, why don't you get on the rules committee and figure it out, because everyone is making those, what the issues are in condos, dogs, kids, all that, there's, all those kind of issues. And
So that means you have to get people involved when they're young.
not necessarily young, but because, well, first of all, frankly, it takes quite a shocking amount of time to get a development ready for move-in. Quite some time. Well, it does, yeah. So it takes some time to build that. I mean, you're not from start to finish, it's going to be like 3 years at the absolute minimum, I would think, by move-in. And so there's, ample time for people to, talk about a lot of issues and work through and just really, we have this thing called Study Group 1 where we kind of, go through kind of housing and how you grew up and why this is, what it means to, it takes a village and all that kind of stuff. To kind of go through this discussion group. And then we have social events and kids events and that kind of stuff too, where we all, go hiking when the weather is better, which is supposed to be this weekend actually. So that's exciting. So we have little socials and potlucks and hikes and stuff like that so that people know each other before they move in, which makes a terrific difference for neighbors. Because, neighbors have trouble getting along sometimes. Oh, full disclosure, I was once a refugee to Shorewood, because my house burned. And, so I lived in Shorewood and I had a dog, and then the dog was fine, but then the people next door had a basketball hoop, and then when the kids would come home, they would play basketball, and then the dog would bark. And then we got hate mail from, I don't know if it was anonymous hate mail that about the barking dog. And the police were very nice, because they said that they lived in Milwaukee and they had dogs and they didn't know what the problem was, because that's like the least problem in Milwaukee is like, you know, people are happy when your dog barks in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
So it was a different, you know, kind of world.
Just
But
to
it-
know this still
it-
happens.
I know, but that's what I'm talking about. But that's the thing in terms of getting along in harmony, and it takes a village. And I think that that Shorewood is kind of amazing in that way, that it does have a village feel. And that's something that is really, I think, valued by everybody who lives here, is that village feel. And I think that this kind of project will really heighten that feel and that whole, you know, concept, that it takes a village. And the other thing, the other mantra that we have besides it takes a village, is we don't all need our own lawnmower. And I'll get to that a little bit more in terms of the budgeting and you know, what affordable means, in terms of housing, because it's more than the purchase price. And that's something that is hard to convey, but is really important in co-housing. So really, we talked about the intentionality, which is that the people who are going to move in design their own village, and they are part of the development of it, and they are then part of, usually try to, you know, they do the actual landscape work or part of it, or, you know, do some of the painting, or, you know, where they're really kind of lowering the cost, but also participating together and building that, you know, community. So that makes a lot of difference. And that's what we call the secret sauce, is the community building and just that kind of organization. River Trail Commons works on what's called sociocracy, because I don't like consensus where everybody has to agree on every issue. So sociocracy has semi-autonomous working groups that have a scope of work and a scope of budget, so that everybody doesn't have to get involved in every issue, and people can get in the working groups that suit them and that they're most able to contribute to, and to participate in those, and let other people who know more about some other areas, you know, participate in those. Because some people like, well, we have to have meetings all the time. Well, no, because we have, you know, kind of division of labor. And then when you move in, the part of what keeps the secret sauce going is what's called the common house. And the common house is what makes the co-housing. That's the difference between, you know, other housing. And that's also what kind of makes the affordability a difficult piece. And we can talk about that, because I've been thinking about that a lot. So the common house makes it possible to have, an idea of co-housing is to have very small square footage private homes. Everybody has a kitchen. That's always I say. Yes, you have your own kitchen. Everyone has a kitchen, their living room, dining room, but it's very small square footage. So everything is small. We don't have those, you know, we don't have 5 bathrooms for 3 bedrooms, and we don't have, you know, large, you know, bathrooms for, you know, everything is small, very small, because the idea is you take the parts of your house that you don't use enough or much or all the time, and you relocate them into the common house. So the common house, for example, here, this is in River Edge Housing Properties, this is the common house. And so, and I can talk more about River Trail Commons later, but so the common house is going to have a couple of guest rooms, for example, because, you know, I mean, most of us who live in Shorewood or around the North Shore have extra rooms. And because we need them, because we have guests and we like to have them, but we don't really use them very often. And so we relocate the guest rooms in the common house. So then people just sign up when they have somebody coming, they want, you know, to use the guest room. Also things like workshops. Can you imagine here we have 40 homes, 40 households of tools. You're going to have the most kick-ass workshop anybody's ever seen, which is going to be, you know, awesome. Same with like craft room, you know, all that kind of stuff, bike repair, you know, all those kind of things that people have And that's why we don't all need our own lawnmower, is because, you know, combine those kind of things. And the same with the kids' playroom. In the common house, there's, you know, big play area so that you don't have to dedicate a whole room like for kids. So, you know, dedicate a whole room in your house to all these toys. I mean, some of you you're not gonna get away with taking them all out of there, but you're gonna be able to, we have designed a big playroom. And that kind of thing. And that's, what the common house is what makes the co-housing, because the common house also has a large kitchen and a large dining area where everybody eats together once a week. And that's what keeps the community together. And that's what keeps the governance together. And that's what keeps, you know, the issues, people can raise issues and feel like they're heard and, you know, all these kind of things. And in a lot of the communities, there's a subset of people who will eat together more often. But there's always like the whole usually eats together every Sunday. So, and then people are like, oh my God, how do you cook? Oh my God. Cause we were at co-housing and we were using their meeting space. So we were doing the cooking for one of the meals. And, if you think about it, we have 40 homes here. So if you think about it and you have to cook once every 40 weeks, and the other Sundays you're getting, you know, people kind of compete on who can cook the coolest thing, you know, it's like you're getting this wonderful meal cooked, very, you know, nurturing and, you know, with everybody around. It's not that much of an imposition, and it's kind of saves a lot of time. I mean, if you get 39 weeks of free Sunday wonderful dinners, and because you're cooking one, you know, that's pretty amazing. So that's really what co-housing itself is. What questions do you have about what co-housing is or isn't? And then I'm going to go on to just our particular development that we're doing.
How do you get in if you want in? Is there a requirement? Is it all just what you bring in and what you can contribute, or are there income limits, or who decides?
Well, who decides is everybody, you know, decides. Some co-housing, about half
Like
the,
in New York.
yeah, well, yeah, kind
I know
of.
this is not a co-op, but
Yeah, I understand, but New York co-ops are usually equity co-ops
Oh.
anyway, so they're more like this than, but there's no common house or anything, but yeah, but it's, you know, more like that. So, usually, I mean, I guess people have different ways of doing it. It's easiest to speak about resales. When, you know, somebody goes out and you're reselling, it's your house, you know, you have you know, a fee simple condominium deed. And you can sell it to whoever you want, but normally the organization is going to have require some hoops to jump through. And basically, it's kind of the people who are a good fit are the ones who want to be there, but they have to have their eyes wide open and they have to know what they're in for. And so normally in resales, what the group will require in the rules is that the person come to at least one Sunday dinner. The person stay in a guest room, person go to a meeting, a monthly meeting or something, you know, like that. So they know, they have their eyes wide open, you know, and that's pretty much it, you know. In terms of, initially, there's, the same kind of considerations as you want people who want to contribute. You want people who want to contribute. For example, one issue is always like, can I rent? You know, what if I want to go to Europe for 6 months, you know, whatever, right? And so the way that we did it in River Edge Housing Cooperative was we said, sure, the issue is not the ownership model necessarily. The biggest issue is participation. And so what we said is, you know, you can have a tenant, but the tenant has to go through the same kind of thing, stay in the guest room, go to a meeting, because we want the tenant to participate in and vote in all of the issues that are day-to-day issues, rules. What do we do with the dog? Well, you know, let the tenant vote because they're there. But in anything like capital contribution or, you know, major repairs or, you know, all that sort of stuff, the owner would be the one who would, you know,
Do
vote
you
on
hire
that.
a management company? I lived in a couple of condos, like let's say
Yeah.
Ogden or somebody to
Mhm.
quote unquote manage the roof project.
Sure. So there's a survey done every 5 years by a professor at Columbia, and she just finished one. And there's almost 200 co-housing communities in the United States. There's 5 in Madison, and there's 0 in the Milwaukee metropolitan area. So in terms of, I guess, wait, what was your question again? What was?
I asked about management, but
Oh, okay, so the survey is, to pay management, really close to zero to, a large HOA fee every month for management. And a lot of it depends on the makeup of the group. I mean, you can just, the co-housing can purchase, professional management and be done with it. Or they can manage the whole thing. Most of it is a hybrid because you're gonna hire professionals, but you may be doing the regular management, but obviously you're going to, hire vendors to do this or that and, roofing and, like you said.
I've been on a couple of condo boards.
Oh, yeah, so right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So if it's such a great idea and it sounds so wonderful, and it's been going on since the 70s.
I love this
why-
question.
Why is it not working?
I can tell you, because I've been doing this particular
200
development for 10 years.
200
This
units.
particular one, yeah.
That's so small.
Yeah, and the reason is because it's an intentional community. So the normal way that it happens is this. About 12 people who look just like me get together and they say, "Oh, this sounds cool. Let's do this because, what are we going to do in our next chapter? This is cool." And about half of the co-housing in the United States is seniors only, and about half is militantly multi-generational. Now, there's a wonderful, very vibrant co-housing community called Wild Sage in Boulder, Colorado. Awesome, works really great. Some of the people who live there, and Wild Sage is multi-generational, and some of the people who lived there, including some of the people who lived there that were related to other people who lived there of different ages, bought an adjacent property and built Silver Sage. And I saw this big plenary session, because they're big on the stage, and there's 3 over here, seniors only, and arguing, this is debate, and 3 over here, multi-generational. And the seniors only were like, I never want to trip over a tricycle again. I never want to hear a baby cry again. And that's what Silver Sage was born from, Wild Sage. And then the other side is like, I live longer if I rock a baby. I really relate to, kids and teens, and, I like to show them how to knit or how to, raise bees or, whatever it is in terms of, there's a really great, like 4-minute Vimeo video that is some kid's senior speech. And my favorite line in it, he grew up in co-housing his whole life and he still lives in co-housing. That's the only thing he's ever known. And he said, when I want to learn how to, make a model plane, or I want to learn how to do beekeeping, people say there's an app for that. But in co-housing, we say there's a neighbor for that. I go talk to Joe, he knows how to do beekeeping, this kind of stuff. So that's, that really makes a difference in how they do that. But, your question in terms of the rules and then the intentionality and, how to vet people, but also the management of it. It just depends on what people want. And the answer is the seniors only tend to hire completely, professional management. They don't want to do it as much. And the multi-generational tend to, the seniors who are not as maybe physically active are going to do more bookkeeping, more work with vendors, more, depending on what the skills are. And then, the people who are younger maybe are going to do more of the gardening or, that kind of thing. So everybody's got a skill in a different area.
Would you say one of the reasons why there are still so few in the US is just, it's a lot of work to get it going?
It's a lot of work to get it going because the model means that it's self-developed. So where does the money come from? Okay, so about 12 people who look just like me get together and say, this sounds cool, let's do this, especially seniors. This is what I'm telling you, is a little easier with seniors. The multi-generational is more difficult. And then when I get to River Trail Commons, we've made it even more difficult. So, but yeah, so in terms of, and then they will say to each other, okay, 30 days, we need 50,000. Cool. Everybody sends in 50,000, 30 days. And then, they say, okay, in 6 months now, we're going to need 150,000 from everybody. Cool. No problem. That's how it's normally done.
There's no quote unquote developer.
Right. That's right. That's right.
The people,
That's right.
They are the developers.
That's right.
You got to find banks willing to.
That's right. That's right. And that's the normal way it's done. Now, sometimes such a group brings in a developer at some stage who's going to be, and there are some, there's one in Portland, there aren't very many who will develop, co-housing, but that's normally how it's done. It's self-developed, it's self-financed. That's how it's done, which means that it's the opposite of affordable. Right? Because you're only talking about people who have a house and can sell a house and, you know, move in and get a HELOC in the meantime so they can put in, you know, a third of their house into, you know, to get the thing built, that kind of thing. Home equity line of credit, you know, because they own a house, they paid off their mortgage because they're old, so they're cool. But they got to, you know, but they got to come up with some cash. So they get a home equity line of credit so that they can get some cash out of their house to put it into the development, get the development started. And then at move-in, normally what happens is 25 or 40, whatever, how many homes you have, there's gonna be that many closings, you know? So like, everybody goes down to the bank on the same day, or one day and one the next day, and, you know, big party and, you know, all that sort of stuff. But that's how it, you know, closes and then cashes out the construction loan.
So in the, multi-generational ones, how did those operate to ensure that it's not just retirees that have houses?
Difficulty, Lee, because people with children have less disposable income than other people, and they need more square footage than other people. So those are like, those don't go together. So sometimes I've seen discounts put down just to be able to recruit kids. There's a lot of, I mean, there's just a lot of efforts that are made to include kids. And in our development, for example, we've built up to 4-bedroom homes for that purpose, because we want to encourage families. And we also have a large play area for that reason, you know, just a lot of incentives to show families that this is, you know, really a good place for kids. And to appreciate that it takes a village kind of a concept, yeah.
And so for taxation wise, as a fiduciary for the village,
Mhm.
we're looking at multifamily tax. And the rate would be just same as, I mean, it's not different because it's not a nonprofit.
It's not a nonprofit.
So it's all,
One of them in Madison is ARCO, is because of their relationship and proximity to the hospital that had a legal mandate to give some land away and stuff. I mean, so they're not 100%, they don't have to be a condo, but usually they are. With an
it's
HOA,
like a private property.
yeah, like an HOA, yeah, just like like you've been on a condominium board, same as a condominium, yeah. That's the same way. Yeah.
Has there been any examples of co-housing either in the United States or elsewhere that was managed by a governmental entity?
Great question, and I'm quite certain the answer is no. However, our neighbors to the north have a very large government built and sponsored co-housing. And the woman who is currently the president was born there, and now she has kids, and she's the president of this co-housing. So we had her on a Zoom, you know, to learn about that, because like, well, that's interesting. And there's no reason why it couldn't be, you know, it's government built and government sponsored, but it operates, you know, all private man, you know, as an intentional community now. But it was, you know, set up that way.
When you say to the north, are you?
I'm in Canada.
Canada? Okay, that's what I just wanted to clarify.
Sorry, continuing the theme of our, yeah.
Yeah.
Milwaukee Shorewood neighbors, yeah. So let me just talk a little bit about, because you were alluding to what we're doing here, about what our particular individual development is. And then I want to get back to the Shorewood issues and maybe how we could solve some of those issues through co-housing by using some different methods, which I've been thinking about a lot since I had my conversation with Rebecca and told her, affordable? What do you mean? Co-housing's not affordable. But I think there's a lot of things that can be done to make that happen. And that Canadian model, you know, is one of them. So River Edge Housing Population, we've been on this for 10 years. But just to find the land. I mean, you guys know all about the land. So we first had under contract a piece of property on Center Street, but that turned out to have volatile organic chemicals. And so we got out of that. And then we made a bid for the municipal land on North Avenue, just west of the
bridge and the dormitory. They wanted section 8, section 8, section 8, which they're now getting 92 section 8. They liked our proposal, but they wanted section 8, and that really was the request. So, we're into home ownership. And then luckily, frankly, kind of luckily, we didn't get any of those, because luckily we absolutely got the best piece of property in the city of Milwaukee. There's no question about it, because this is right, 2 parcels down from the pavilion in Gordon Park on Locust and Humboldt. Okay, so you guys know where this land is, right?
Down which, Humboldt or?
South.
Locust?
Humboldt, it's on Humboldt,
It's on Humboldt.
just south of the pavilion. There's 2 houses. Well, there's one house on a vacant lot and then another house. And then this is where Big Daddy's Barbecue used to be.
Before that, a taco place.
Yep. Before that, yeah.
Noodle factory.
You're a neighbor. Yeah, okay. So you got, yeah. So, that,
This is itself on Humboldt.
what?
It's on Humboldt.
It's on Humboldt. It's on Humboldt and Center, really, is the cross street. It's on Humboldt and
Oh, the Beer
Center.
Baron's place? No.
It was,
South of Humboldt.
he knows
It's
the
a
history
one-story
more.
brick building right now?
No, it's like
No, no,
long, it's a big building, like
big,
short and,
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking.
okay.
yeah, it was Big Daddy's Barbecue last, but before that, a taco
Yeah.
place, and before that,
The only time I ever went. was-
yeah, it was a bunch of stuff, and then back, it's really bizarre, the seller said he didn't understand how this was allowed to be built, because it's like a bunch of different buildings together and different levels, and it's really kind of weird. And then there were 2 individual homes, which have since been demolished. So we can talk about zoning issues too, if you want to get to that. 1.4 acres. Studies show,
Wow.
yeah, why do you say good, big, bad, little, what, small? Small.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, studies show, and I guess I skipped this part of just talking about, co-housing in general. Why is co-housing good for Shorewood? It's just amazing what the studies show, and this just has to do with when people get together and they interact, what happens? Believe it or not, people in co-housing live longer than other people statistically. Why? Because they're healthier. Why? Because of the not, I wouldn't really call it peer pressure, but maybe examples or, something of other people in terms of what they eat, but also like, hey, I'm gonna go on a bike ride. You wanna come with me? No, I'd rather, stay in my bed. But if somebody says that, I'm fine, I'll go with you. There's a lot of that kind of thing where you're more apt to be active. Studies show people in co-housing are vastly more interactive civically in their municipality, in voter drives and everything else, because I guess they're used to self-governance, so they take that out of the community. I mean, you think it's a little bit insular, everybody's kind of looking in, but in fact, studies show that people in co-housing are more active socially. Also, there's so many of these issues with youth, well, crime, but also just youth in terms of juvenile delinquency, and all of that kind of stuff is just lowered because everybody's kind of looking out for each other, taking care of seniors not being lonely. I mean, they say loneliness is the new cigarettes or smoking or something like that, and so this is really the cure to loneliness. There's a great video that's not more than like a minute, that is a Canadian video, and this woman comes home from work and she goes up the elevator, nobody talks to her, and then she goes in to her home and her roommate's got her earphones on and doesn't even notice she's there, and she just gets pissed off, so she takes a table out in the hallway, puts a candle and some wine, and then just knocks on everybody's door. And then there's one old dude who's like a curmudgeon or something, and everybody kind of like thinks he's like mean or something. And so this little girl climbs under the table and knocks on his door. And then he kind of closes the door, so they think, oh, he's not going to come. But then he comes out with a big, French bread and wine, and, and then everybody, and that's called Eat Canada. That's what they're, trying to address the loneliness, issue in terms of, the downtown stuff. So what we're doing with River Trail Commons is, because this is Milwaukee, and so it's just a different world where River West is quite integrated compared to anywhere else in the city of Milwaukee. And so to put something into River West, that's part of the culture in River West, is to be diverse. But Milwaukee is unique in this world, because we are the most hyper segregated. We have the largest racial gap in family wealth from home equity, in incarceration, in graduation from high school, in employment, in unemployment, all of those areas. But family wealth through home equity is just such a huge thing. I mean, how did my parents pay for college? How did I pay for my kids' college? It's family wealth through home equity. But Milwaukee is unique because we had racially restrictive deeds until almost the 70s, later than any other place in the country, where restricted where anybody really the other, anybody of color, Jews also, were unable to purchase homes. And then after the deeds were struck down very late, then there were the redlining activities by the real estate brokers, as well as the lenders and the insurers, American Family. And there were these large class actions about the redlining in the 90s, really, those lawsuits came to fruition. So Milwaukee really is you really have to address something different if you're going to build in Milwaukee, because it's a different animal. And so what we wanted to address is building, is that some families have been shut out of building family wealth through home equity. And so we are addressing that with first generation buyers, not first time buyers, but first generation whose families didn't buy, possibly because of being shut out because of the illegal situation in Milwaukee. So we have $1 million so far. We want to discount half, maybe fewer with larger discounts, or half with kind of more shallow discounts. We're not quite final on that yet, for first generation buyers, so that we can make some of them more affordable. We don't say affordable, we say more affordable. Sometimes we use workforce housing, you know that term. That's that means, yeah. And so, for example, if the house is going to be sold for $250,000, maybe a 1-bedroom condominium or something, and we have 50,000 on that for a discount, so it's going to be sold at $200,000 to a first generation buyer. Then that first generation buyer, 30 years later, or whenever they sell the property, they would have to sell it to another first generation buyer at then 4/5 of that then appreciated value. So it remains perpetually more affordable.
So 4/5, what did you say? I'm sorry.
Of the subsequently appraised value.
They bought it at 4/5 of the value.
Yes.
It's bought at 4/5 of the value.
Exactly. I just
Sorry,
used
what did you
that
say?
because it was easy math.
What did you say?
So they bought it at 4/5 of the value. They bought it
Oh,
for
okay.
200 of the 250, and so it's the same. So it appreciates, but you have the same.
Proportion.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So, de-emphasizing cars, we go in through Center Street, and we kind of go into this alley. And then there's underground parking. It's zoned for 0.5 parking. There's gonna be 40 homes. There just happen to be enough room under there for 21 parking spaces. They will be deeded parking spaces. They'll be expensive, meaning that they won't add to the cost of homes for people who are willing to forgo a car. This is the only place where two bike trails cross. There's really, and we're just a step into the forest and fishing and kayaking and all that sort of stuff right there.
So you found the land, did you have a financial piece first? Or you had people interested, or, because I see you need money, land, people.
Yeah, that's it.
How did you?
Well, there's a couple ways to do it. One is the way that I said, where there's like 20 people who are, or 12 people or whatever. Another way is government sponsored, which we're gonna talk about now in terms of solving all of Shorewood's problems here. And, the third way is, basically I bought the land. So, you know, I mean, I put out most of the money on this, and so, you know, then when everybody moves in, you know, that money will, you know, cash out the, you know, the construction loan and also what I put in, so.
So you'll get your money back.
Yeah, except for $1 million, which is gonna be going to the discounts. Yeah. Well, exactly. So, and so the parking is down here. Now, we're not building the solar right now. This has a lot to do with affordability. Which is all the bells and whistles that are wonderful and save people money in the long run, but, look bad on the purchase sticker price when you're getting in. So we're doing phase 1, phase 2. We are building solar ready, which actually means nothing for the townhouses because the roofs can handle that. But for large buildings, the roof needs to be fortified considerably more in order to put that, solar on. So this is all being built solar ready. So it's ready to put the solar panels on when people are get a handle on their mortgages and they're willing to put some more money in. And the same with EV chargers. The grid is set up to be for EV chargers, but we're not putting them in yet. And there'll be there's I think 4 or 5 spaces here which are guest parking. And then there's planned to be a shared EV vehicle for some people who decided not to have a car and they want to share a vehicle, which could be a subset, like maybe 8 people out of 40, or, you know, who knows, we'll see. So there's, I mean, right now where I live, which is I live on Cambridge and Kenwood. And I park on the street. I don't have a driveway or a garage. So, I mean, people can either park on the street, plenty of parking on the street, or they can buy for a lot of money a deeded parking space, or they can get rid of their car, which my husband did, although he still thinks my car is a joint car. So I haven't gotten that far yet, but yeah. So what other questions? And then I want to go on to, you guys plan to leave to end at 10, or what's the plan?
We usually go for an hour.
So if you have other questions, great. Otherwise, I want to talk about what I've kind of some thinking outside the box, weird ideas of how co-housing could be affordable in Shorewood. So should we go to that?
Yeah.
Do it?
Yeah.
This, I just meant after I talked to Rebecca, said, are you kidding? Then I thought, well, maybe we could do this. So I've been thinking about nothing but this. All right, so one, I'm just gonna throw these things out here because, and then, you know, my last thing is next step. So, you know, we can talk about, you know, I'm happy to come back and hone in on something if something grabs you guys. So one thing would be the land trust, because we had talked about that, meaning that a different entity besides the individual homeowner owns the land. I have been, I guess, dissuaded of my concern that that's going to be a problem for appraisals and so on and so on, because it seems to be becoming more accepted by lenders. So that's an option. So the purchase price then is the home, but not the land, which makes the purchase price a lot different. I mean, so that's one way to go. And it is one way that some Madison co-ops have operated and are operating. So some co-housing, some Madison co-housing operates on a land trust. So that model is set up and the model is supported by that municipality and so on. That's, you know, one option. One thing that we're doing deed restrictions with these discounted homes. One thing that Linden Co-housing does in Madison, which is the same thing, kind of, but theirs is municipally sponsored, which is, they call it a reverse mortgage. You know what I'm talking about?
I've heard.
Yeah, well, I barely do, but no, I know the reverse mortgage that Madison does. So Madison gave money to certain number of homes in this co-housing. And the certain number of homes have what they call forgivable mortgages. Did I say reverse? That's a whole different, that's a whole different, no,
Make that work.
that's a whole different commercial. Forget that. Strike that. No, forgivable mortgages, second mortgages, forgivable second mortgages. Okay. So what the municipalities, basically it's the same thing. It's like they're giving some money for this purchase. And then that can be forgiven if they sell it to the right person at the right, you know, I don't have a copy of all that ordinance, but basically that's what it is. And so it's a way of, you know, when you've got the government subsidizing for Section 8, but that's rental, and no family, you know, home equity and family wealth and any of that. This is a way to kind of get people into home ownership without their having to have that whole down payment and so on. Now, a lot of people can get into housing with no down payment because of vet status, first time home buyers. I mean, there's a lot of programs to do that. But what Madison has done is just to pay these second mortgages. And then, so they're just putting in a pile of money for a certain number of houses so that they're more affordable. So I've talked to them a lot about that, and it really is the same thing as what we're calling. I just like the irony of the deed restriction, because that's the history of Milwaukee, is the deed restriction. So I kind of like not the reverse deed restriction. I won't use that term because that gets it. So, okay, so so that's one way to do it, is the land trust. One way to do it is this forgivable second mortgage. I have to say that, forgivable second mortgage. Another way to do it is to do what we're doing, is discounts and deed restrictions for resale. Another way to do it would be to make it into a cooperative instead of co-housing, and make it rental. But we are not doing that because we want home ownership and to build, you know, well, otherwise you may as well be in Section 8. But the difference with the co-op, because you are a renter really, although the verb, you use different terms, so it sounds cooler and everything. But you really are a renter, but you have control over your situation. You have control over approving who your neighbor is going to be. You have control over, you know, you're not going to get evicted willy-nilly. You're only going to get evicted if you're like really, you know, a problem that can't be rehabilitated or something. And you're, you know, it really, it's quite different, but it's an alternative to renting. It's not an alternative to ownership. Co-housing is an alternative to ownership. Cooperative housing that's limited equity is an alternative to renting. But there's no reason why you couldn't do it as a cooperative. We had initially planned and spent a lot of time on having 3 types of ownership here. 1 was regular ownership, 2 was the discounted with the deed restrictions, and 3 was cooperative housing. And we were originally going to put 10 of the homes into cooperative housing, which would be owned by an entity, and then the people would be members of the cooperative. And just, it turned out to be a little bit too difficult to do for that group to get their down payment kind of pieced together. So that kind of went out. I suspect that will happen eventually, because some people who are going in, who look like about me, are not, and don't have maybe any kids or any particular place to give their property when they don't exist anymore, are going to enter into what we're calling legacy deeds, which is they're buying their property and they're saying when they die that it goes to the co-housing. And so those homes will probably eventually become as a cooperative with a renter. And so that they will be more affordable and, you know, easier to come in and easier in and easier out. The thing with River Edge Housing Cooperative is it's easier to get in, a lower bar to get in, and it's a lower bar to get out. You know, so it's an alternative to renting, easy in and easy out, as opposed to this, which is home ownership. So another thing that I thought about is the common house. The common house is what makes this the co-housing. I mean, it is the signature piece of co-housing.
Which building is it in?
The common house is this. It's connected to the big building. There's 24 homes in this place. I'm gonna live, right here is mine. I got my little name on this one. There's 16 townhouses. Every house is a single floor. So these are stacked townhouses. There's 2 kind of duplex townhouses is what they are. But I mean, each one is individually a condominium.
And you don't need to pay for elevators.
There's not in these, no, because they're just 2 stories. I mean, there's second one, yeah, but there's a big elevator here that is for the common house here. Now, the common house here has, a lounge with a fireplace, and then and then there's actually kind of 3 stories, because this is the rooftop, which looks out over, but the second floor has, also a big deck out of the dining room looking out to the park. And, this, it seems to me, after talking to Rebecca, that one thing Shorewood could do, this would be like revolutionary, brilliant, I think, be like unbelievable. Because why is this not more affordable? The houses are small square footage. They're designed very intelligently, so you have everything you need, not too much and then not too spread out. But, and the things that you don't use that much are in the common house. But what makes it so expensive and also difficult to describe as from a real estate broker's point of view is how much a 2-bedroom house costs. Because you're also buying this lounge and this meeting room and this dining hall, and I mean, it's big enough that, you know, your kid's wedding in and your big Christmas party, and, you know, I mean, it's huge building. And that's what makes it all expensive. So why not, Rebecca, why not have the Village of Shorewood sponsor or part or all of, I'm just thinking, you know, public-private, of the common house? Because what you can do, the common house is often used for people coming in, giving little presentations, giving little performances, and inviting the public in. You know, I mean, this happened every time I was at a Sunday dinner and a co-housing, which I've been around the country to a number of them. And after dinner, which is completely private, just the people in there, then a singer will show up or something, and then people from the public will come in, and then an event will happen, you know, or a little lecture or something like that can happen. And so, I mean, this is going to be a little tricky, but I think it could be genius, because the thing is, when you talk about what this is, you have to talk about, I feel like when I walk out of the door of my little private house, I walk over that threshold, that it's just kind of like me when I go out of my bedroom into the living room. You know, you're going, I probably put a little more clothes on, but I'm going out to, you know, a broader sphere of my own house. So you have to have the feel that when you're in this lounge, this is my living room in here. This is my dining room in here. You know, this is my deck. You know, this is mine. It's not like a condominium downtown where, you know, you might rent out a party room. It's a different feel when you don't feel like it's yours, like it's a commercial venture. So I don't see why not. I just get these ideas like in the middle of the night. Why the community of Shorewood couldn't do some public building, or part of it be public. I mean, because
Public building on the site that people don't want to tear down.
There you go. There you go. Because it's tricky. Well, maybe you could convert it. It's
Yes,
tricky because you have to make this feel like it's part of your own living room. But at the same time, it's very common to invite the public in for various events. And that's part of what the, you know, co-housing often does, and they're kind of known for that, is to be really active in the community and get the community in, and they go out of the community and that sort of thing. And so if Shorewood with their 2.1, I mean, the problem with the tax incremental districts and so on is you're still talking purchase price. And so that's really for the developer more than the buyer, you know, the homeowner. It's, you know, that's a little bit tricky. But if you could do something where you can, you know, take the 2.1 and build a common house, and then the rest of it can be very affordable. These houses are very small and very affordable houses, but for this magic, wonderful.
You have
piece.
numbers in terms of
You mean,
construction costs
So
or
you're saying like
purchase or?
if the village gave away the land?
That's one option. Like when we were bidding on North Avenue, that land could have, you know, the city could give that away for free. We paid a lot of money for what we bought. That's pretty primo. Yeah. So I mean, you know, like 1.374. Yeah. Yeah. And they're,
Did the city own
no, there were two individual homes. The same owner owned all three parcels, but there's three different parcels. So I mean, so those are my kind of thoughts about, how to make, how to make this more affordable in Shorewood and what Shorewood could do to make this work.
Do you think it would sort of break the co-housing feel if the common house was a village amenity rather than particularly to that development?
Well,
So like, if
well,
the
yes and no,
workshop-
I mean, it would have to do it, so particularly the dining, I
Yeah.
mean, particularly the dining area, there'd have to be, I mean, normally what happens is you have the dinner on Sunday, and then on Monday, people come and scarf up leftovers, or, cause it's like their kitchen, And so, you'd have to have certain days, or, I mean, I haven't thought this through that much, I only talked to Rebecca Little, but Rebecca's the one who sparked this idea, which I think. No, because you say it, how is it affordable? Well, normally it's not.
Yeah.
But if a municipality is behind it, and like Madison is really behind their co-housing. So Madison has done, this, forgivable second mortgage, to make some of the homes more affordable. And I mean, I would really recommend that there's an income mix, in the co-housing, that there's, they're not just, this is affordable housing over in this little corner of Shorewood. It's, that's a different feel when, people just-
I mean, we really, integration is,
right, there's a lot of different ways of integration, the multi-generational and mixed income, as well as, what we think of more traditional diversity, which we can't speak about anymore, but we can still do it.
How do you find people, like you had to have a base of people, right? You just, so how do you find your people?
Yeah, River West is, is kind of a different place. I mean, people are kind of oriented that way, I guess. The other thing is there's a national, Co-housing USA, which has a pretty big network. Now, we've been doing this 10 years, 3 pieces of property. So people's lives change in 10 years. People's kids grow up. They want their little kids to live in there. Well, now the kids are off to college, And so, the group is not static when you take that long. And so, one very active household moved to Iowa to a new co-housing that started there because they were tired of waiting. One very active person moved to assisted living in Arizona because they got tired of waiting for this. So, I mean, people's lives, a group is not static, and a group is going to turn over a lot, and that's common in co-housing. But the national group, when you're on their website, that's where everybody goes and everybody knows. And I mean, we've got people from Maine the couple in Maine, and honestly, we do not have a website up right now because we don't have final pricing, and I don't want to be deluged by this. And so we've just I don't know how anybody finds us, frankly. This couple in Maine, they live in a co-op now. They're awesome. They have a kid who moved to Milwaukee, so they want to now move out of Maine and move into co-housing in Milwaukee. So they found us. Couple in Seattle. The one daughter moved to Chicago, one moved to Madison. They thought Milwaukee's a perfect in between. So they contacted us. I mean, people contact from people who are interested in co-housing. It's a national market. It's a national real estate market.
so you
But-
closed on the link.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
what's your biggest problem, right?
The good question. My biggest problem is, figuring out what's the cart and what's the horse and what's the chicken and what's the egg, because it seems like everything has to be done before something else happens. But that thing can't, I mean, I'm sure construction, everything, you have to get because we want to get the pricing before we get, everybody says, the first thing everybody says is where. First they say what, but then people know all about co-housing, so they know, they contact us.
And you got,
Where?
an architect.
We
right?
got the where, yep. And then we've got the how much. That's the second question, right? And, so that's a problem because you can't say how much until we've got luckily, our architects and our contractors have been working with us for 10 years. And they designed for this Center Street and then for the North Avenue site and now for this. So I recently had to train them of how you design co-housing.
Are they doing it pro bono?
But now, No.
Who is your architect?
Kabbalah Washaka, which is
Yeah.
also known
I
as
was gonna
TKWA.
say, yeah.
Now, it's another interesting, fact is that, my daughter, who was the land manager of the Linden Sculpture Garden at the time, was kind of helping out with the Center Street. This is 10 years ago. Since that time, she decided to go to architecture school, went to architecture school, then started working for, well, she first got a job with HGA or whatever, making twice as much, but she didn't want, I mean, that was summer. Then she went to work for TKWA where she wanted to. And, so now she's one of our architects, which is kind of exciting because she knows that whole, process. But they also have the city of Milwaukee plan, which is helpful because they have they have the whole bike trail, the overlay, the whole park overlay. They have all of that is TKWA has that contract with the city of Milwaukee.
So what's your capital right now?
Well, soon, once we have pricing, what'd you say?
You're looking at it, right?
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Soon, what happens is, we have, once we get the pricing, because we get the pro forma, because we got all the pricing from the contractor and we've got the pro forma in pretty good shape. And so then what we need is the flow sheet of how much money we need when and all of that. So the National Cooperative Bank, which, will probably be doing the financing. It's interesting because I heard that after lots of lobbying, like a decade, they expanded their scope of lending 2 years ago to co-housing. And they've given their first construction mortgage to a co-housing group. One they've done so far. And so I was talking to them on the phone and they said, yep, great, yep, we can, we got all the amount of money you need and, no problem. And they were like, how did you find out about the National Cooperative Bank? Because you guys never heard of it, right? It's kind of an obscure thing, right? How did you hear about the National Cooperative Bank? I said, well, actually, I got the very first mortgage ever in the 70s for River Edge Housing Cooperative. I kind of helped them write the mortgage document because, they were so new. This was the very first mortgage in the National Cooperative Bank. We also got the very first HUD insured mortgage to a cooperative ever. We had to have a sit-in in the blue building downtown, but that only took a few hours because they wanted to go home, no problem. And so we, that's what we did. So that they were like, oh, really? So you're, so probably we're getting the construction loan from the National Cooperative Bank, which has better terms. So, what happens is all the pre-development money is the problem that you've got to raise to figure out how you pay the pre-development money. Once you start drawing down the construction loan, then you know where you are and you've got that flow. So, does that answer that question?
I know, it just doesn't stretch as long as my turn.
I don't want to keep you guys too long. Any other questions?
No, I thoroughly enjoyed listening to
It's a
Well-
lot to digest, so
What'd you say?
a lot to digest.
A lot to
So, yeah,
digest.
so
It's very complicated. And in spite of it starting in the 70s, it seems very new.
it's very more necessary than ever, I think, is the way the society's headed with social.
I just,
Fragmentation.
since I talked to Rebecca, just for
Yeah.
I really just meant
Since I talked to Rebecca, and I was thinking that this really does fit more than most other places, Shorewood. This really fits it takes a village. And, we don't all need our own lawnmower. Now where that goes is the affordability. Because when you're trying to get people in, you're talking about the purchase price. But what you have to do is talk about, because what's the purchase price? Purchase price is down payment, but then beyond the down payment, it's what's your monthly budget? What's your monthly budget gonna be? And everybody costs out how much your mortgage is. But when you cost out how much your mortgage is, what you have to do is cost out what everything else is. And so what everything else is goes way down in co-housing. And so you're gonna save so much on your monthly budget besides the mortgage that there's gonna be more room in your budget for a higher mortgage than you were paying before as rent or whatever. And what I mean by that is, and this is still from this Columbia professor who does this study every 5 years, is the use of your car goes way down because you don't drive places very much, because you don't go out to dinner as much. All this is very detailed, itemized. don't go out to dinner so much because you're having more common meals or even just meals with, you know, other people. For example, these are common balconies. They're not, you know, you see these balconies, like when I kayak down the river downtown, I see these balconies like this big, like what is the purpose of that? It's so small, but they're all, you know, separate. These are common. And the halls, the same kind of way. All the halls have these little conversation nodes, right? So there'll be a little table. So you can like chill there and, or the stair landing, especially like if you're old like me, the stair landing on a little table, a little bench or something. So you're like, oh, I don't think I'll take that one. I'm gonna take the stairs, but I'm gonna take half of it at a time. And oh, good, Mabel's over there too. I can chat with her while I'm sitting here resting up from going halfway up the stairway or something. But so these are common, undivided, balconies. And so, you know, little tables there and you walk, you know, I could walk from here to the common house on the balcony. And seeing, you know, here's so-and-so and said, oh, you want some coffee? Sure. You want, oh, I have some extra something rather from yesterday. Do you want, you know, all of that kind of stuff.
Did you say you gave up one site because of contamination?
Yes,
It was that big of a deal that you couldn't?
yes.
overcome that.
In fact, it was a good move because it's still being monitored. It still has the pipes coming out. You know what I'm talking about?
No,
this
which
place?
is that
It's on Center Street. It's further west. It's across from the school playground, really. It's where it's a big stage where they do the 20, you know, River West
Yeah.
24.
Oh, that part of land?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that plot of land. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we first designed for that one. Yeah, but it has volatile organic chemicals, which means that they may migrate to the neighbors' children who live in the houses, and we didn't want any part of it. And it's still being monitored with these pipes coming out
Oh, I thought that
with the
was like
DNR study.
Installation.
That's what the, oh, you did?
Yeah, I thought it was just like.
No, it's not an art installation. No, we ran. Yeah, we put some money into that with phase 1 and phase 2 and all of that sort of stuff, and then we got the hell out of there. Yeah, we don't want that.
I guess we're waiting to find out on our public works site.
But the,
Yeah, well, there's different kind of contamination that's, you
Sure.
know, there's heavy metals which are frankly easier to, you know, remove than volatile organic chemicals. That's like the worst thing because they migrate, and that's all I know, but we got out. So there you go.
They migrate out and they come up
Yeah.
into the housing. That's-
Yeah, exactly. So there was, you know, single family houses next door to that, and we didn't want any liability problem with, we don't want that. So,
I remember during the presentation that I saw you were talking about raised gardens in the.
yeah.
Is that because the soil is,
No,
okay. it's
No,
just
the
for-
soil's fine.
Oh,
No, the soil's fine.
Use it for anybody.
Yeah, so this is different. These are just regular in the ground. And then this is now, in like containers or something. And the reason is, it's always something, we got permission and everything to use the alley for our driveway so that we have more space for housing here. When you say 1.4 is small. Everything was agreed to by the fire department, but then it wasn't.
Okay.
And so they have to come in, the fire truck has to come in here and be able to turn around. And so, so this is a little wider here. This is the current version, but I don't know why this is so pastel. So I like this one, but this is an older design, but not that much changed really. It's pretty much the same thing. I mean, so the fire truck has to be able to come in here and to turn around here. So we're not happy with that, but
Is it, that street is a north-south that it's on, did you say?
yeah, Humboldt. Yeah, Humboldt.
If only fire trucks.
If only.
And the solar panels are gone completely.
Well, that's because this is phase 1 and they're going to be they're gonna be applied phase 2, so they're not
But
part
like
of
the
purchase price.
orientation,
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, this one was an earlier.
oh yeah, I see that. Yeah, that's true. Oh yeah,
Which
good
would
point.
give you, I would think, a little less, that's northbound.
Part of it, we added 2 4-bedroom homes because we had families that wanted bigger.
And you have a goal for shovels in the ground?
I was talking on Wednesday with our consultants. This was always shocking to me. And because we're moving along really fast right now and, they kind of said fall of 2027. Which kind of surprised me. I thought, we're ready to roll. What are you talking about? We got the group going, we got the everything's going, yeah. But, it takes, they say, 14 to 18 months to build, and then, cause there's winter.
Welcome to my world, like honestly, with what you're just saying, like, oh, like we're ready to roll. And then I feel like every other day it's like, well, it's gonna be.
So it could be open in 20.
It has honestly been a year for We Energies. And if you go past the
Oh,
site
I
right
know.
now, you go past the
I
site right
know.
now, you see 4 We Energy trucks and cherry pickers and those guys all up there. And it's,
Was fall 2027 shovels in the ground or?
no, move in. No, move in. The problem is that there's an overhead, transformer up here. And the pavilion has its own, but there's 2 houses to the north that we can't, okay, so they demolished, there's 2 individual houses right here on this side and this side. And they were demolished already, but they can't demolish the big building there until they can use the giant overhead cranes. And they can't use the giant overhead cranes till We Energies gets rid of its big telephone wire and or electric wire, I mean, and its transformer. And so they have to bury that. Everything that happens is 300,000. Cause they were like, yeah, the city was like, yeah, you can use the alley, but you have to pave it, 300,000. And then We Energies is like, oh, we have to move this transformer, 300,000. I don't know, it's just some round number everybody uses, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, so they have to put in temporary underground and then they have to put in big, so it's a big thing, but they, that cold spell, that was a couple of weeks, that stopped. I mean, it's literally been a year getting We Energies to get this done.
So will you, like your utilities?
Yeah.
Makes me feel.
That's the utilities. The energies has to do, they're obligated as a utility provider to do a certain amount, but like water, sewer, how does the payment?
They're not obligated to do anything.
So you're paying.
They're not obligated, We Energies obligated to do nothing unless you pay them
Okay.
and give them the proper,
The $300,000.
all of the,
Yeah.
$300,000, but also all of
You're
the,
paying for all the infrastructure, the water, sewer.
I mean, hooked up to the
Milwaukee.
cities, sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's, the connection is right there on the street. So, I mean, yeah.
So what motivates your grit?
I think that I came from a pretty fairly large family, and this whole idea of loneliness being the biggest killer, it just seems like, well, that's stupid. We can solve that, right? That's one thing. And the other thing is just the idea that we don't all need our own lawnmower. I can't understand this concept of just flying over Europe. You fly over the United States, you see big farm and then this little farmhouse. And then way far away is another farmhouse on another plot of land. And then way far, that's how it is when you fly over the United States. Fly over Europe. I was in Austria listening to one of my kids give a speech on carrot cultivation to the International Organic Farmers Association. So that's why I was here. And I was flying over Europe and I noticed it wasn't like that. There's this village and then there's these farms, but the farmers all live in the village. And then they have common tractors and common cultivators and common whatever harvesters. That's the word. Yes, but it takes a village and we don't all need our own lawnmower. I mean, why everybody has their own tractor or their own lawn? I mean, as a kid, I never could figure that out. It just never made any sense to me. And so that's why as soon as I moved into town, I started River Edge Housing Cooperative. So that, people can share and people can help each other out, just in little things. There's no requirement to help anybody, but it's so easy. And you know how it is here. You never speak to anybody in the winter, In the summer, people sit on their porches. At least in Milwaukee, they sit on their porches. But this is not such a porch community here, probably, but we are. But in the winter, nobody sits on their porches, so you don't, see those people. But that's really what motivates me is just like the economics of it is so stupid when everybody has to buy, everything. Plus, when you own, a lot of people want condominiums because they don't have to do any of the management. And that's the downside of owning your own house, right? Is all that management. There's a lot of people in Shorewood who are elderly and not really wanting to manage a whole house anymore, and this is a perfect solution. Who is this perfect for? Number one, everybody. But number two, people who have kids who have special needs. That is like perfect because everybody looks out for, and everybody understands. I was in one co-housing where there was a guy with some genius physicist or something, but he was in a bike accident and he had a brain injury. And, he was, on disability and so on, but he said he's got about 4 hours a day where he can think like he used to. And the rest of the time he's a little fogged up, you know,
So how many
and
people will-
everybody knows that.
How many people will live if you're full, if you're up capacity?
40 households, but a lot of them are one bedroom, so, you know, fewer people. And as I say, studies show, but the fact is, this is too many, and you were saying it was quite, you know, small square foot is small, 1.4 acres. But the better amount is like 25. In order, they say if you're below 15, everybody knows everybody's business too much. And if you're much over like 30 households, then some people get lost in the cracks. So we don't really like 40, but when you divide a big number by a bigger number, it comes out better.
And so you,
And when you divide it by a little number, it doesn't
so
come
at
out
this
so
point,
good.
you haven't gotten a commitment and a down payment from anybody.
Well, we haven't asked for, we have commitments, but not legal commitments, and we haven't, I mean, people definitely have their name on different houses. But we are not asking for pre-sales until we have the pricing. Once we have the pricing, then we have the deeds and the pre-sale, but that's coming very soon. And then we'll put the website up, because we just don't want a deluge right now. But soon there'll be a deluge and there'll be all,
Commitments.
but then we've got to vet everybody, and we've got, you know, and, you know, 40 sounds like a lot of houses, but we have, you know, like half of them filled up already. So when we start getting people in, we don't want too many at a time. I mean, right now, people just kind of, I don't know how, find us like about one a week or something like that. And then we kind of vet them and talk to them and hang out with them at Collectivo or something, walk the land, and, you know, that kind of works, but and it's good not to, you know, what'd you say?
So Mitch is telling everyone, so there you go.
Oh, okay, well, good, okay, Mitch. Where do you live?
Just north of I can't remember the name of the school. It's not, yeah.
Lake Bluff?
Lake Bluff, just north.
Oh, yeah, Lake Buff, that one is on the side. Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, so I live by, everybody know the boathouse?
Yep.
So, yeah.
It's an Airbnb, right?
Not at the moment. Right now, it's getting a new lighthouse. Which, by the way, is
I got
quite,
11 o'clock, I gotta.
it's, by the way, it's quite expensive, lighthouses, just so you know, if you ever want to.
Do I gotta call this to close or whatever?
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah,
So
second.
but don't forget our. Oh, it's-
He had to leave for a 10
Oh,
o'clock,
okay.
Oh,
but we knew this.
Okay, we're good. It was fun, you guys. were
Thank you so very much. It was
interesting.
inspirational.
Sure.